finally get to dance with each other now that we're back in
Indeed,
person.
live dancing.
I know, but we're back in person again.
In the studio.
At ATC Studios,
Yeah. We just had a rehearsal. It was cold. You made me rehearse outside.
I mean, it wasn't that cold. Maybe you just weren't doing enough. Maybe you were being lazy.
Maybe
because I was
a bit more characterisation going on. Yeah.
But no, it was nice to be back rehearsing. It was outside, which is good because obviously it makes it even safer. Small groups and doing some blocking. It's just nice to be back, I think.
So is.
It's just nice to have it's just a nice laugh. A laugh.
A little bit of a laugh. Would you ever laugh?
We do have a laugh. Have you been? Have you been? Been alright? In general.
I literally thought you said, have you been?
Have you been?
No, I haven't been because there's no toilet in the studio. I'd have to go.
I know what you're like with your old bladder.
How have I been? Is that what you're trying to say?
How have you been?
Let's articulate,
Sorry,
shall we?
my diction wasn't very good there.
Oh my goodness.
How have you been?
I've been okay. Thank you for asking, kind regards. Bodycut had our first live rehearsal in our ATC studio because we're not allowed back in the school hall yet. So that was fantastic Friday night. So nice. I must just say that some of the girls came and sang one of the numbers, social distance, of course, and it made one of our leaders, Kate, cry. So you'll see Kate later, hopefully.
It was that bad.
It wasn't that bad. It was that nice. She had good
nice.
tears.
It was good tears
because we were back together. So it was lovely.
We'll be welcoming her later.
We will indeed.
As our guest. Because we've got something exciting and we've got some. This is probably like the most serious topic we've done.
It is the most serious topic we've done. So for us, it's a balance, isn't it?
It's an interesting balance. We're not usually that serious.
No.
We're not serious people.
Yeah.
But I think it's an interesting one. It's a very important one, and it's actually come from a fan request.
It has.
So are we going to jump straight into it? Are we going to talk a bit more?
I don't know. It's up to you.
I don't know.
It's up to you. What have you been up to? Have you done anything exciting this week? 'Cause you asked me. I thought it was rude. I haven't asked you back.
It was a bit rude. I was trying to hint, but never mind.
I had hen do.
Oh, okay. We'll focus back
to
on
me.
Back
to me. Had a hen do.
Yes.
Turns out, age of 49, I've decided I don't like sambuca shots.
You don't like sambuca?
I don't like them. I'm not going to do them again.
Okay. Was it a nice hen do?
It was a very nice hen do. Thank you very much. You had a very good idea last time I saw you, which was to pretend I'd put hand sanitizer in a spray bottle and actually it would be a cocktail and then squirt it down people's necks. It was a great idea. It worked really well.
It's a genius idea.
Genius idea.
I mean, I did suggest that because just before that you asked if I would come and be the stripper.
Yes, and you turned me down point blank.
I did. I mean, there's only so much sexy that a party can have.
Indeed.
And I thought I can't overdo it.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see
I mean, the poor stag would have... I mean, he'd have been lulled in... she'd have just jumped straight on you, the bride.
Oh, blimey. Okay.
Says
a lot about her, doesn't it? How rude. But anyway, going from that to a more... you still need to ask me. What I've been doing. I have... Well, typically, I've waited an entire pandemic, 15 months of no shows and just virtual stuff and things like that. I'm now currently working on 4 productions. So, I mean... It's more that or are you stupid? Because it's obviously we've got Robin Hood with ATC, we've got In the Heights with Yobbos, we've got my school show.
Oh, what are you doing?
So we're doing a concert. MTI Europe, the rights holders, have offered a concert that they have curated called All Together Now, which is a selection of songs from shows that usually you wouldn't be able to get. It's completely free to do, but you have to stage it on a specific date. Oh, so everyone across the country will do it. It's to raise money for groups and schools and theatres. So there's a good mixture of songs in there. So we've got things like, we've got Frozen, we've got Mamma Mia, Matilda, Les Mis, Beauty and the Beast. You know, there's a great selection of songs. So we've got auditions for that in a few weeks' time. So I'm just publicising that at the school at the moment.
Very good.
So there's that, and then I'm helping film next weekend a dance show, which is going to then I'm then going to edit together for them, which is going to be shown at an outdoor cinema in September, October time, because obviously because of restrictions, just being safe, but it'll be a big like drive-in event. Nice. So I'm a little bit stressed and tired, but I'm enjoying it as well. It's nice to be busy again.
Doing what you love. Doing what you love.
Doing what I love. So anyway...
Which leads us neatly onto the topic of doing what you love for everybody doing what they love.
Exactly. So we shall now discuss our topic of the week.
Topic of the week.
week of the week of the week. I'm holding it on a little bit longer just to emphasise.
Oh, it makes it so much better.
So much better.
So anyway, we were asked this week, we had a fan request essentially. We were asked about this one. We were sent a message and asked about what it would be like to audition for drama school if you perhaps were autistic or had Asperger's or things that you'd have to perhaps disclose on an application form. And there was concerns regarding, would there be some bias, perhaps as in terms of perhaps going, or maybe we won't invite them to audition, maybe we don't want them at our school, people like that at school. It was quite an interesting and important topic, which made us decide, sorry, I'm looking at my phone because I'm finding I've got lots of research. I know, we're hard-hitting journalism this time. We've literally got hard-hitting journalism.
We kind of broadened it a little bit, didn't we? Into talking a little bit more about inclusion. You've got to go on, read it.
So we said, how can we make amateur theatre and professional training more accessible to all? So because that was the question asked, and because it was someone who genuinely wanted to know, I did some emailing, Jill.
Oh, steady the buff.
Anyone
will think we planned it.
I know. This is literally hard-hitting journalism going on. So I emailed a question as a teacher to multiple, in fact, most of the top drama schools in the country, and I had some very speedy responses. The majority, we'll go over some with our guests because I think some of them will be interesting, so I won't read them all, and I won't obviously read them all word for word because we might be a bit boring. But obviously the majority have come back, all of them have come back so far, and have said, obviously we welcome anybody with whatever condition or educational need or disability, anybody is welcome to audition. But it is important to disclose it on the form. And the reason it's important to disclose it on the form, as a few of them have said, is because they do have policies and practices in place that supports these people depending on their disability. So the only way that you can get the correct support is if you disclose it. So it's not about putting it out there to go, this is so they know who not to pick.
Yeah.
It's there to go, how can we support this person?
Exactly. Make the reasonable adjustments to make it work.
Exactly. For example, PPA, which is where Nathan and Luke went, who we had as guests in Series 1.
Season 1?
Season 1, I'm very American. In Series 1, they wrote, I've just lost it. No, there it is. They wrote back a really nice email talking about, we have a very supportive environment and have had several neurodiverse students on our courses here, and they have a welfare officer in place who offers support as well. So that, they do have those policies in place. I'm trying to see, I'm just going through a few of the other ones.
It's definitely that support thing. I spoke with my sister, my niece has Down syndrome.
Yes.
And not at the kind of studying it level, but in terms of getting involved in amateur theatre as she's been younger, my sister made some really good points about the fact that a lot of organisations, drama groups, some of the well-known ones even, make a big thing about saying they're inclusive, but actually then don't put the right support in place. So Amy, my wonderful niece, is nearly 21 now, and actually you'll like this, for her 21st birthday, which is not till November, by the way, she's already asked for a DVD of Jesus Christ Superstar, the original version.
Brilliant.
And a Nancy from Oliver dress that my daughter Kate is going to make for her from scratch. So yeah, she loves her musicals. But Jan was saying it was interesting because they included Amy. I won't say the name of it. It's a very well-known organisation that included her, but then didn't put the right support in place. And so, although she was there, she wasn't properly included. Yeah. And actually, in some ways, that's worse. Amy's a member of a very good group, a special needs group called Bedazzle. So, for some people, it is better to be in a group that's dedicated to special needs, depending on the nature of the need. But that's kind of quite key, I think, is making sure that certainly at that sort of amateur level, we at Bodycut have had people with sight issues and various people with autism, and we make it work, and we make sure they've got helpers and support around them to make that work. But it's about the parents, the individual themselves, making sure that they're, as you say, that they're really honest about what they need to help them properly be included, because otherwise there's no point.
And I think, you like with anyone going to drama school, it's important to do your research as to the right school. We always talk about the right school, and this would be one of those things. I mean, there was one email where, it's a bit like what you just said about a lot of places perhaps say they do. And I won't mention the name of the school, but one school came back with a very nice, we are very supportive, but then included a paragraph which personally I didn't quite like the tone of. It implied that, however, things are very competitive, and if they are worried about this and can't handle it, they shouldn't be auditioning. It was that.
Okay.
That was the tone I got. It wasn't obviously word for word, because that would be a bit cheeky. But there are certain things, and it made me think, perhaps it'd be interesting to read their policies, because perhaps they don't have the correct training or support in place. But most of these schools, most of them have, I'm still just looking through, have sent me links to their policies on their website, which I think are really interesting, and I will have a look through before we talk to our special guests, because we'll be filming that tomorrow. But obviously for you, it'll be in a moment, because to see what is in place. But I think as well, and we will come back to those with our guests. But I think as well, when we talk about, that's obviously the professional training side. When it comes to amateur theatre, I think this is where some do find it tricky, because we, for example, are not trained specialists.
Nope.
And actually, whilst I work in a school, and we do have members or leaders or committee members who perhaps do work, with children with various special educational needs, for example, we're not necessarily given we don't necessarily have the full training.
No.
So it is about.
And we don't have the ability to just pay money for extra support. We're all volunteers, so there is that challenge as well.
Exactly.
I mean, some of the paid, which is interesting that's the example that my sister gave, was actually one where you pay quite a lot for a membership fee for the named. Some of the named groups, and they should therefore use, if they're saying it's inclusive, they should use some of that money to bring in the right support. But when it's a charity like ATC or a sort of youth group like Bodycut, it is challenging.
Yeah.
We always do our absolute best, but it only works with the support of the family involved as well.
Absolutely, and I think that's important, isn't it? It has to be a conversation and a dialogue to make it as inclusive as possible. I mean, we work very hard to make sure our groups, I know, are as inclusive as possible. I would never turn anyone away for any reason. I would do everything I can to include them, involve them. I mean, we do have. I mean, it's about being accessible in all sort of forms as well, isn't it? We, as ATC, we created a bursary a couple of years ago to try and be more inclusive, to allow people who perhaps can't usually afford amateur theatre, or perhaps to encourage people that perhaps are less represented in our area. I would say, for example, if we're talking about being inclusive in all forms, I've always said that the one thing about Banbury is the amateur theatre community is quite predominantly white people, and it's about encouraging people from various backgrounds and cultures and that diversity is about getting that involved, and that's what our bursary hopefully helps with and encourages more people to take part. But it's something I think we all have to learn and really consider and think about, whether it be at amateur level.
Because the interesting thing is when you're inside it, you don't know what's putting people off as well. So
exactly.
it's that challenging yourself. What have we say that, and then what are our actions that actually back it up. So the bursary is a great example of trying to actually follow it through.
Yeah, and I always say that because we're not properly trained, there will be times where we might make mistakes, and I think that applies to anyone and everyone. We may make mistakes in terms of not necessarily putting the right things in place, or may have done, not thought about something. It's just about that communication.
It is.
Because we'll definitely go above and beyond to try and make sure people feel welcomed, whatever the case. So it's just that communication level. This is really hard hitting
Oh,
stuff.
I know.
I just touched you. COVID.
Stop it.
This is really hard hitting stuff. But it's really
Good stuff. It's worth bearing with us this week. We're not quite as funny as we normally are. I mean, if we ever are funny. We're funny to ourselves.
But it's more serious, and actually I think it's a really interesting topic that should be discussed more. But we'll go through a few more of our
guests.
The emails with our guests and the policies. Yes, would you like to welcome them?
I would love to welcome them.
I don't know why I'm going high pitched, but you welcome them.
I will. So welcome now to our wonderful guests, Kate Maclean and Mandy Cox from Bodycut Youth Drama Group, but also are here talking to us because of their actual jobs as well and some of the other stuff they've done. So it's not a conversation about Bodycut, it's a conversation about what they bring as well.
Absolutely.
So, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome guests.
We're back.
We were over there before, Ben.
We are.
We're still in the studio, but we've changed shots.
We're slowly showing them the different parts of the studio. Next week we'll go over there.
Okay.
Then we'll be against the black backdrop behind the event.
Fine.
But we do have special guests. First of all, Moana in the background. For the video watchers, we've got a Moana cut out. But then also, we have two guests with us today. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Introduce yourselves and tell the listeners and the viewers why we've invited you to be guests on this topic.
Shall I go first?
Please do, Band.
I'm Mandy Cox. I'm a leader for Bodycut Church Youth Drama Group. This is my second podcast.
You are a returning member of the podcast team.
Returning highlight. And the reason I've been asked to come and talk about this topic is because for my day job, I manage the adult learning disability health team, and I am also an occupational therapist, so I know quite a lot about inclusion and the rights of people with special needs.
Good.
Okay.
Top that one.
Yeah, I think there was a spare seat.
I'm a seat filler.
So I'm Kate, and I have been a teacher in primary education for over 20 years. So I've had some experience. Not as much as Mandy, but some experience.
Kids with special needs in
Oh,
your class?
absolutely, yeah.
Most years, or?
Yeah, every year, yeah.
So our topic is we're looking at how we can make amateur theatre more inclusive, as well as how perhaps professional training. We did some research into how these top drama schools, how they, because we were contacted by a listener who asked us about how would that go against them in an audition, and we did some research into this, and we went over some of the responses from the drama schools because we contacted them, and we'll go over a few in a moment. Do you think at the moment then that amateur theatre, as you know it, is as inclusive as it could be, or could we be doing more?
I think we could be doing more. Thinking about, my experience is in healthcare as well as in theatre, but in healthcare. And in healthcare we talk about making reasonable adjustments. So we expect mainstream services to make reasonable adjustments for people with special needs. And I think that we probably could make more reasonable adjustments in amateur theatre than we currently do. But we have to keep hold of the reasonable word.
Yeah.
Because actually you can't make adjustments to the point that would make it completely level playing field and then disadvantage your other members. So it's making sensible, clever adjustments, I think, and that's the important thing.
We were saying a bit in our introduction as well, Mandy, that for a lot of the drama groups we are all volunteers, and we're lucky because we've got within a Bodycut we've got people with brilliant experience that can help make it happen and work for us. But there also comes a point where I'm not trained, so I'm what might be reasonable because you know a lot more. If it was a drama group that didn't have a year, we might not know how to make that. How to make those reasonable adjustments. Yeah.
I mean, we were saying as well in the introduction that one of the most important things for us, especially when we're not perhaps professionally trained to deal with different circumstances, is communication. I mean, Kate, as a teacher, as a primary school teacher, obviously I'm sure you have lots of communication with parents. Is that important for you?
Communication is key, and it starts right, and it all boils down to respect, which is the key part of it. And it's talking to the child. If you're dealing with children, it's talking to the child's parents, and actually looking at what they want to get out of the experience. Because actually, sadly, you see it sort of go the other way, that actually schools think, oh, isn't it wonderful, we've got so-and-so on the stage and we've included everybody. But actually, they don't want to be included in that particular performance. So we've got a lad at the moment who doesn't want to be on the stage, it's not his thing, he wants to be doing the sound. So we've managed to set it up that he can do the sound and the technical side, because that's his thing, as it were. But that all boils down to communicating with the child, communicating with their parents, the adults, just to see what it is they want to get out of it.
And finding out, if there is an issue, let us know. Don't feel like it has to be bottled up. And we were saying we would try and make those adjustments if we can, but we need to know.
I mean, it's very hard because you're dealing with a very broad range of needs. You could be talking about a child with dyslexia where actually they might not want to come to you and say, I'm having trouble reading this, but actually if you knew that, you could say, well, let's record it, or that you can learn your lines that way.
That's what's so important when we do those forms for when people join the groups. We will do them and say, is there anything that we should know about from a health point of view? For parents, a really good note for any of the parents watching to be as honest as possible there, because the more you set us up for success, the more that helps your child be part
From
of it.
the physical need, and quite often if it is a physical need, you can say to that child, well, you know your body better than any of us, so you tell us what you want and what will make it work for you.
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, the form thing is what a lot of the drama schools were saying. They were saying, because one of the questions was, should I put it on my form? Will it disadvantage me if I say that I may have this extra need that I need to cater to? And they said, no, you've got to tell us, because then we can put those things in place for the audition, perhaps, or interview, and then if you do get a place in the school, we know
what's needed.
what we need to know. You get put in touch with different people. And you're right, Jill, it's the exact same with, say, amateur theatre. Put it on the form, be honest.
Then, in my real life, I'm an HR director, and it's exactly the same in employment.
Yeah.
It all works perfectly if the communication is there and the honesty is there up front to say, this is what I need, and then we can make the adjustments. So reasonable adjustments is a phrase I use a lot as well.
Thankfully, we're living in a very different society to the society that perhaps, people's parents, grandparents grew up in, where it was deemed more of a problem, but in this day and age, it is all about making sure everyone can be included.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Mandy, do you think there's like a bit of a stigma to, or how do we get over that idea that this is something we need to keep quiet or be embarrassed by, something that we can perhaps discuss more openly so that it's understood more? Do you think that there is a bit of a stigma still?
There is, there is definitely a stigma. I deal with hate crime quite a lot against adults with learning disabilities, hopefully not children, because you'd hope that they didn't get targeted, but they probably do, in the same way. I think the more we see people with a learning disability in the media and on stage and in television programmes, the better things will get. I mean, there have been a number of shows recently that have people with mostly Down syndrome, I have to say, but with Down syndrome in them as actors. Line of Duty is one of the big ones. Cool, I was going to say, I've got them written down here. Cool, Midwife. I don't know if anybody's seen the film The Peanut Butter Falcon. It's amazing. Watch it if you haven't. Great film, really good film. We are starting to see people more in mainstream dramas. I think that helps, and I do think that having people with special needs in a drama group helps those that are around them just be accepting. I mean, in Bodycut we have had people with different needs. We had a young man who was completely blind, and he adapted really, really well to the group, and the group members were amazing with him. So,
and what was actually very interesting about that individual is I mentioned that to my sister, who's always watched the Bodycut performances since I've been involved, and she couldn't remember it. She didn't know.
And then she shouldn't know.
No, there was no reason, because he was such a fantastic actor that it made absolutely no difference to the parts he got or to how he was on stage, with the right support around him.
Brilliant. I mean, I think drama in general and the right theatre groups and things like that. It is such a nice welcoming environment. That whole process it's a cliche, but we always say, oh, it's a little family, it's a little, a drama family type thing going on. But it is true, isn't it? And that's why, people should feel welcomed. And don't get me wrong, it's a high pressure at times, especially as we get to go to such a show, we know this. But actually there's a lot of love there, and people shouldn't ever feel embarrassed. So one other thing that we obviously talked about, because we sort of said, how can we make amateur theatre more accessible? Obviously we were prompted to do that because we were talking about someone with autism, but also we talked in our introduction about just being more accessible just to everyone. So from people from lower income households who perhaps don't feel they can afford theatre. I mean, going to the theatre can be an expensive experience, and some drama groups, some people might find that quite expensive, even though I know a lot of groups try and keep costs down. But also in terms of, we talked about the fact, I mentioned the fact that I found in our area, amateur theatre is predominantly white people. And how we can make sure we are being open and showing that we are accepting of everyone and anyone. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you find that as well? Do you think that we, obviously not just for mental health, say, or for special educational needs, but can we be more accessible to others as well, and how might we go about that? Bit of a big question.
Within schools, the introduction of the pupil premium
Yes.
money has been a huge benefit, and actually I would encourage people in that position to seek out your school, and even if it's not an instrument, if it's perhaps a singing teacher, that there are things that can be done to support. Possibly people don't always know it's there.
And as when you think about our drama groups, we sometimes make an excess of funds, and in the past we have donated those excess of funds. We often donate our raffle to Catherine House Hospice. Perhaps we ought to set up a fund in each drama group, though we don't necessarily donate those extra funds to a charity, but we keep a charitable fund for anybody who can't afford.
Which is what we've done in
We've
ATC.
set up a bursary for
The other thing that's been nice around this has actually been the year of being virtual. And we've had some kids who have loved it, who've really come into their own, because actually some of the sensory overload that happens when you get a lot of young people in a room, they haven't had to experience on Zoom. So we've seen some kids really blossom, and we've seen other kids go, do you know what, it's not for me, I can't deal with that. So again, it's that, drama groups having to flex over the last year, and hopefully that will sort of stick with us, that feeling of we get the way that is normal doesn't work for everybody, therefore how can we flex that a little bit moving forward as well.
Absolutely. In terms of the professional side then, training, I will go over some of the emails and things we've got, because we went over a couple in the introduction. One thing I did mention them in the introduction is PPA School, who wrote back a really lovely email with everything that they do, and they do some amazing things to support everyone, like welfare officers, things like that. But one other thing they do, which I was reading back through it today, they run sessions where they will talk through auditions and how the auditions work to people who are thinking about auditioning, which I think is really important for everyone actually, because I think, especially someone perhaps who's not used to different situations and, changes and lots of people perhaps, it can be quite a stressful environment, lots of people, lots of high pressure, perhaps I think that's a really nice idea though, just understanding what will happen on the day before going into it, and understanding that process is really good.
Actually, been a lot of time people use that very safe environment of their own group or their own class, and actually going to something different is quite hard.
Yeah. Rada, obviously,
You've got a response from Ross.
I got a response from all of them.
Get us, everybody! I don't know.
Opening doors. They sent me a link to their policies, which they've got some nice things in place. A lot of it, me and Gill sort of said, there's a sort of a set policy that most groups will always say, or most schools or most businesses will always have, how we're inclusive, things like that. But then it's about what they actually then do. to do that. But the RADA have said every student that applies will be able to audition, and I can say with pride and confidence that no student will be rejected due to educational needs. And as long as it's mentioned in the application form, we will provide adequate support, including at the audition. And that's the other important thing. It's not just the support once you've reached it, there is support for that first stage as well.
I wonder whether there's more we could do as the kind of collective youth drama groups in Banbury to get in touch with schools and encourage that kind of link between if someone is finding a great experience of it in school, but then there's another hurdle of that's just what I do because my school teachers told me to do it, as opposed to actually it being something that they might consider down the line. So that could be something that we try and drive forward in the world of Banbury.
And it's important to do that not just for performance, as you were saying, people interested in sound and tech. There's so many roles in theatre: costume, hair, makeup, front of house, publicity. All those things. You never know, someone might be really keen to do that. Might not want to get on stage, and this goes for everyone. Might not want to get on stage, but there's so many roles that could suit people. So I do think that, whilst performance at times might feel less accessible, theatre should be accessible because there is hopefully something for everyone. Absolutely. But I mean, it's a very heavy topic.
It has been a bit of a departure for us, Ben.
It has, but such an interesting one as well.
I really hope that people comment, and I'm doing that, I'm pointing downwards, but comment below and keep the conversation going on this, because it actually feels like a start of something rather than the end of something.
Yeah, and as we've said, educate us as well. Like, we are not experts, to be clear.
We've made mistakes, we'll continue to make mistakes, I'm sure.
And we may have said something in this podcast which other people might disagree with or think is wrong. Please do say if you think that's the case, because and educate us. Let's have that conversation to make sure that we're being as accessible as we can possibly be, I think, to everyone.
Final thoughts? Anything we've not touched on that you wanted to say on this topic, lovely?
Some really practical things that I think we can do. So we can think about our language, so we can simplify our language. I think that's really important. We can think about easy read or adapted scripts for people if we need to. I'm very happy to do that for any group, as it's my area of expertise.
Brilliant.
I think we can use video sometimes for people to help learn their lines, so we could video rehearsals as long as we get permissions, and then that would be a really good way for people to learn their lines. And that doesn't have to be somebody with special educational needs. Some people just learn better or in an auditory way. We can use prompt cards and visual resources. Again, I can help with any of those. And I think we just need to think about extra time and also the consideration of fatigue. So anybody that does have any additional needs will find a 6-hour rehearsal absolutely exhausting. And so it's just remembering.
And also anyone who's like old, might also find a...
Sorry, slightly old.
Okay,
But there's lots of little things that we probably don't consider as well as we should. There's a lot of practical things that we need to think about, I think. And I think the most important thing is what I call in my world person-centred planning. So if there is somebody that comes along to want to join your group that has any special needs, it's sitting down with them, as Kate said, them, their parents, the rest of the group, whoever we need to sit down with, and make sure we've got a plan that's person-centred around them and that works for them.
See, that's interesting, because I think it links back to what I said about stigma. I think some people, the idea of sitting down, almost like highlighting what they think is a problem. I mean, I'm using that as loose phrase. I think that idea of sitting down with somebody and going, but we shouldn't feel like that. People should feel comfortable talking and having that conversation.
And maybe we should do that for anybody that joins a group, because actually we all have our own needs and they're all special in their own way.
Yeah, like a welcome interview type of thing, just to discuss
chit-chat.
what they want to get out of perhaps doing.
What you're good at, what you're not so good at.
The hidden disabilities is the hardest, and actually going back to your example of someone looking to apply to drama schools, that's where it's really important to share those things, because actually some of there might be things that might come across as behaviours that they can't be helped. This is part of a condition, and actually that needs to be understood. So therefore, if you've shared it, and like you say, these days every university, every college will have somebody or department set up to help and support.
You know, an interesting question, which maybe in the future we'll ask actually these drama schools, is on their audition panel, do they have someone who is trained? As in, who recognise that, who understands? Because whilst they may have a welfare officer, someone who perhaps does understand special educational needs and being accessible, they may not have them on the panel.
Yeah.
Often they want, with all due respect to some drama schools, often they want it to look flashy and they say, we've got this actor from the West End doing the auditions this time and this alumni who's been in this show. Amazing, they know their stuff undoubtedly, but do they understand the people? Interesting.
I love that idea about induction chats.
Yeah,
You know, if you think how many times as different groups we've had someone join and then maybe they've left quite quickly, they haven't settled. Actually, there could be more we could be doing up front to avoid that. And
there's actually some things we don't think about, you know, and we perhaps on our own shows where we haven't thought. At this point, we've asked children to go barefoot. Actually, for some children, that's a huge sensory problem. You know, actually, we go through all those thoughts.
And when we ask them to do a read-through and somebody struggles, like you said, with dyslexia, and they're struggling but they don't want to say anything, but had we known that in advance, we'd have made sure that they had, you know, some simple lines to read but still had a part in that.
Absolutely.
We have a child at the moment who's got, and I don't know the name of them, you probably do, they're tiny things they put in their ears, which do a similar job to an ear defender, but they're very, very subtle. And so when we have loud singing going on, that doesn't bother her in that sort of big group. There's lots out there.
I really like the idea of induction to understand all this, and it might be something I think we should all think about implementing perhaps, and anyone else who's listening who might run a group might want to consider as well. I think it's a great idea.
Flag again if you've done it already and how it's gone.
Yeah. Or if you have any ideas yourself of how we can be even more accessible and inclusive to everyone. But like I say, it's been a fantastically interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. Next week, a little bit more light-hearted.
Possibly. We're going to tackle world hunger next week.
Poverty.
We'll tackle poverty. No, but it's an important one, and it's a discussion that should be had, and hopefully this is the start of the discussion, isn't it? That can continue. But thank you both very much for your expertise, and join us next week for more TreadingTheBoards. We're going to dance out. We get to all dance out with no music, but the music gets added in.
It goes like this. Just ready? And we go.
Bye-bye!